Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Harari. I'm the Director of Innovation at the Connecticut Green Bank. Thanks, everyone, for joining this morning for the business conference for our Fleet Advisory Services RFP. I'm joined today by members of our marketing team, Rudy and Emily, and by Kevin Moss, our Senior Manager of Clean Transportation, who you'll hear from a bit later. We do have the Q&A and the chat open. If you have questions, we'll try to answer some of them live on the line. And this session will be recorded and posted to our RFP website with the answers to the questions as we receive and post them. So with that, I'm going to dive right in. So today we're going to be talking just at a high level around what the Green Bank is, why we're in this space, our regulatory authority to administer a fleet advisory services program, and then do a high level overview of the RFP that we issued, and then take any questions that you all have about the scope of work. For those of you that are new to the Green Bank, we are a quasi-governmental state agency here in Connecticut. We are a Green Bank. That means our primary focus is on supporting the deployment of green financing options. We started our practice really in the energy and energy efficiency space, but clean transportation has always been a part of our mandate. And more recently, we have sought to identify ways that we can put our public capital to work to accelerate deployment of funds into the electric school bus sector to advance the deployment of those vehicles across the state of Connecticut. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to sort of talk through our statutory authority and to start with the RFP.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, everyone, as Sarah mentioned, we did recently gain authority to administer this program from the Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. So they've been running a docket on medium and heavy duty electric vehicles for a few years now. And I'd say the kind of primary subsectors of focus within that docket have been school buses, transit buses, and then last mile delivery fleets. And then I'd say there are potentially three things that will come out of a final decision in the docket, and that's on essentially establishing a make-ready infrastructure program, designing custom rates that help address some of the demand charge issues that can be inherent to medium and heavy-duty EVs, and then launching a technical assistance program. And given the fact that we felt like the electric school bus market was ready to kind of take on the technical assistance offering at this point, we essentially petitioned that PURA, grant us the authority to start planning and running a program. And so we'll be able to get that sorted in the meantime ahead of them, hopefully issuing a decision in August of this year. So we're excited to see that come to fruition, and then hopefully be able to incorporate those additional incentives into the overall analysis of the electric school bus market in Connecticut. Next slide, Sarah. And so with the kind of program design that we've envisioned, we're essentially going to split it into two parts. So the first one is this fleet electrification planning. And so this will be more of a cohort-based kind of short burst work stream. On the cohort-based side, essentially that would be, as we're thinking about it, working with 3 or 4 school districts at a time, and then presumably with their school bus operators as well. Over 90% of school buses are, operated by transportation service contractors in Connecticut, so they're a pretty huge part of the planning effort in the state. And so there will certainly be some pretty close interactions going on with both the school district and the contractors, but we do want to emphasize that the school districts are the ultimate client of this service. While it does note this sort of cohort-based model, that's really more of an organizing function, and so there won't necessarily be any, collaboration presumed between the different school districts. That's really just a way for us to help on the marketing and recruitment side, and then also just organize the program around the school year calendar. So in terms of the specific services that we'd like to see certainly doing pretty technical analyses on the fleet composition side, figuring out, what sort of vehicle replacement, swapping, and schedule would make sense for the school buses themselves. And then obviously doing a pretty robust route analysis as part of that as well. And then doing a lot of work on the charging infrastructure side. In the decision that we received from Pura that's linked in the previous slide, it does kind of spell out all of the different kind of authorized coordination mechanisms between the Green Bank and then Eversource and UI here in Connecticut. So there is essentially a formal mechanism to help compel coordination between all the parties here. So we are really happy to see that included. And then beyond that, we'd like to see just like a overall short and long-term cost analysis. I think we've heard from a lot of the school bus operators in the state that they're pretty interested in doing a like kind of a staged approach to school bus electrification. So on the short-term side, that would essentially be looking at, what is the near-term potential for school bus electrification for a particular district. And I'd say that the biggest, or one of the biggest factors we're looking at there is at the school bus yard itself, are there any significant distribution side upgrades that are needed? So essentially trying to figure out, what is the right number of buses that could be quickly electrified, allow operators to gain experience with deploying and using the electric buses, and then essentially coming up with a, kind of strategic long-term approach to full fleet electrification. So that's why we're pretty intrigued by seeing both the short and long-term outlooks there. And then all of that analysis would then be put in together into a narrative write-up that could be easily shared with school leadership and a school board, but also be appended to any form of, federal or state grant application. So we don't want this just to be a plan for planning's sake, but we really do want it to be a tool that can help drive additional grant funding to Connecticut and to these school districts. And then we think there's scope for the Green Bank to come in and offer additional low interest financing solutions on top of those grant dollars. So we really want this to be a planning endeavor that leads to action. And Sarah, I think I'm all set on this slide.
Thanks, Kevin. So recognizing that a plan only gets you so far, we've also scoped out support for deployment of the fleet over a longer term period that's more customized to what the school district needs. So the real difference between the two parts of services that we're trying to procure from this RFP are the electrification plan and the elements that Kevin just reviewed on sort of a deliverables cost basis, and then sort of a longer term school district support for deployment under sort of a time and materials basis, and recognizing that these are related but not exactly overlapping scopes. We have allowed flexibility for folks to apply for one or both parts of this RFP, either as individual consultants or as part of a team. In this longer term engagement, we envision that there are a number of things that school districts may require support from to move forward with electrification. But again, those will be sort of specific to what each district requires, whether it is support for procuring the buses and EV charging infrastructure, to coordinating discussions with their provider and renegotiating their contracts as required, to supporting them, as Kevin alluded to, on their capital stack, whether they're leveraging Green Bank financing, grants, or funding from other sources. As we laid out in the RFP, Pura has identified some primary ways that the utilities, the EDCs, will be required to support this program, and figuring out how we can support school districts, not just through the electrification process where we're looking at the hosting capacity of different sites, but on the longer term as we begin to file interconnection applications and identify sort of the least cost ways to deploy these fleets and stages, supporting school districts through that. And then identifying what training and operational support the school districts or their providers will require in order to transition their fleets over to electric, and identifying whether that's training that's provided by the school bus manufacturers themselves or other resources within the state, from our Office of Workforce Strategy or others that we can bring forward to support that transition. Definitely in this section in particular, but in the fleet electrification planning scope, we all look to you as experts in this field that have supported these kinds of engagements in the past to inform us about whether these are the appropriate scopes and whether we need to expand or narrow in any way the kind of projects that will be performed through this RFP. We do ask, as you put together your bids, if you can identify if there are any other elements to the scope that you view as critical to supporting the electrification of these fleets and supporting school districts along that journey. And if there are any things that you view as sort of high cost items, but you think are essential, just flagging which ones those are for us for our awareness. With that said, moving on to the timeline. Today is March 11th. We have the bidders conference. By the end of the week, by 5 p.m., please submit questions to us about the RFP that you have that are outstanding. Those questions will be bundled, and all of the questions that we receive with their answers will be posted by Friday of next week, the 21st. We hope to receive all of your submissions by April 3rd and then make a decision a week later regarding what path we want to move forward to. So with that, I will open it up to questions. You're either welcome to unmute or submit questions through the Q&A function of the chat here. So we got a question about how many school districts we're planning to enroll in the program. So we envision that each cohort will be about 3 to 5 school districts, with the first one running this summer, starting in June. We have designated the 2 cohorts that we hope to run this year, one in early summer and one in the fall, as restricted to distressed municipalities within Connecticut. That is a Connecticut-based definition that's based on income and other factors. There's a collection of 35 municipalities that qualify for that designation, so we're hoping to recruit our first 2 cohorts from that group. Rudy saying that they can't unmute. Is that a function that you can switch? In the meantime, is there going to be one selected contractor for the duration of the program? I think at this point, we haven't made a determination regarding that. I think at the stage we're at now, I would like to procure a contractor that can support at least 2 full years of the program, with the understanding that we may adapt and shift the program as we understand better what the market needs. We received another question about whether we'll be posting the presentation. Yes, we'll post it along with the recording of it onto our RFP website.
And Sarah, we can unmute folks if they want. We just have to say that, and we can unmute them. It should work fine.
Question for you, Kevin. Do all of the districts own their sites, or are there any with leased facilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say that we've typically seen leased facilities for the school bus yards themselves, though a handful of schools or municipalities own the property where the school buses are stored. I think that is generally our preferred model, just because that it allows for the EV charging to be treated more as a kind of public infrastructure and can help on the kind of market competitiveness and contracting side. But we recognize that there's the need to leverage a lot of private property here in Connecticut as well, but very much a case-by-case basis as to the specifics.
We got some questions around the contract term. The way that we have scoped it right now is on a per school district basis for each part of the services. So we've requested that costs should be provided for the fleet electrification phase. That's the phase that Kevin went over, on a per school district basis. And then for the fleet deployment phase, we've requested that costs be provided on a time and materials basis per school district. We've contemplated that the fleet electrification phase should be about a 10 to 12 week engagement per school district, and that the fleet deployment phase could take up to 24 months per school district to support them. Again, recognizing that you all have experience with these kind of programs, we are certainly open to your input and advice around whether those are the right amounts of time. Given that every school district is different and every cohort is different, how does the Green Bank want to see pricing the RFP response? I feel like I just covered that. Given that there are some school districts that will require more support than others, we're still hoping to see costs provided on a per school district basis. Another question mentioned proposers can propose additional scope if deemed appropriate. How will be that evaluated as part of a check per price proposal? We won't be evaluating proposals solely on a cost basis. We'll be looking at which providers we feel like can best support the mission of the Green Bank and the goals as identified by us in PURA to support these school districts to electrification. A question for you, Kevin, from how many buses do the districts have on average?
I'd say it's a pretty big range. We have a little over 7,500 school buses in the state and 169 school districts. I'm not going to attempt the mental math of exactly how many that is. I'd say that a kind of typical school district, I would say, is in like the 50-ish range, based on some of the numbers that I've seen around, but obviously a lot of our urban areas can, be well in excess of that. I think here in New Haven, we have between 300 and 400 school buses, for example. And then obviously a lot of our rural counties may have, about 10 or even fewer in some cases. So there is quite the range, but I'd guess the median is around that 50-ish mark.
If anybody would like to come off mute, if you could just raise your hand and we can unmute you. Otherwise, we'll just give it another minute to see if more questions come in, or you're welcome to submit questions by email to the RFP@CT Green Bank email address that's here on the screen by this Friday. A question about whether there are any small disadvantaged business goals associated with this RFP. I'm not sure I entirely understand the question here. We are, as the clients are predominantly school districts. We have issued this RFP in compliance with the disadvantaged business enterprise compliance requirements accorded to funding that we may use to fund this scope. You'll see in attachment A, the federal compliance requirements associated with that. So there are requirements for us as far as how we administer this RFP with regards to small and disadvantaged businesses. But that's more our responsibility.
Yeah, Sarah, I think the only thing I would add, really long term, there might be some deployment tasks, or tasks that are supported through the deployment channel that would also include those federal compliance requirements. But those would mostly be for the Green Bank to make sure are fully followed.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and close down the webinar, but thank you all so much for your attendance today and your interest in this RFP. Kevin and I both appreciate your engagement on the RFI that we issued back last year leading up to this RFP. And for those of you that have been participating in the PURA docket as well, it's been great to have all of your expertise as we move towards launching this program in Connecticut. We're very excited about it. And we look forward to seeing all of your submissions. So hope that you have a wonderful rest of your morning, and thank you for your time.
Thanks all.
Thank you.